Hello, thanks for watching another one of my videos, or listening to it, probably is better, but um, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I did a video just where I was talking about the ego. It was like, there's so much to there's books, entire pages and pages of script that's ever been written about it. So, it's something you can go into endless detail on, because it's the world, or the most of the constructed world is just an outer manifestation of the human ego. So it affects everything, and ultimately it is an illusion. You're seeing things through a veil. One of the sort of favourite spiritual quotes, if you will, that I've heard, that contains like a really profound truth, in my opinion, is, I don't know exactly how it was worded, but Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, you must be like little children to enter the kingdom of heaven." And what that means, my interpretation of it is, if you think of a little child when they are before they start developing a proper ego, and the minds really start to develop, they are just total unconditional love with no judgment, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. I've had experience with children of 4 or 5 that were really close to me at the time. I was a parental figure. I can't go into it too much because it's too much of my personal life. But I know what it's like to father a child of that age and to be involved with them on a daily basis, and it's a beautiful thing to behold, because all they are at that age, I can't say for any human, but in any experience I've had, at that age, a child is just total unconditional love. That's all that they are. They see, there's no judgments, there's no making decisions, it's all just, it's a beautiful thing. And the challenge, and you might say, well, why do we have to develop a mind? Well, it's a challenge that we're at that stage where we have this right, that our minds are there to be used as a tool. The mind, or the ego, or whatever you want to say, it's a fantastic servant but a terrible master. And the majority of the planet, the mind is the master, when ultimately it isn't. And that's why the planet is in the state that it is. It's like, there was a guy who went to Manchester last night, who's like, there's no point mentioning any names, but he's like a political activist, and he's sort of pro, well, no, let's say his name, it doesn't matter, but he was the head of the English Defence League at one point, and I was reading a bit about him, and he was like, he said he was like an Islamophobic or something. I didn't even know what that was. And it's like he's into this and he's into that. He agrees with that political term and he disagrees with that political term. And I'm reading it, and my mind was just battered. I was thinking, this is all bollocks. I mean, what you're doing is you're clinging to concepts in your mind, and this group of people is this way and that group of people is that way. When, of course, in some degrees in life, you have to make decisions, and your mind, if used correctly, is a fantastic tool. If you can connect at a deeper level, your mind is what I mean by saying it's a great servant. It will serve you. We need it to function. To function as a human being, you need your mind. And the ego is present when it takes you over. When you believe the thoughts and judgments. Like, for instance, about a person. You say that person's an idiot. What does that mean? There is no reality behind that statement. That person might be unpleasant at times. They might be they might have less IQ than you, although IQ doesn't have any intrinsic reality behind it anyway. But does it mean that person, does that define what that person is? That person is an idiot? No, of course not. No, not even someone that I don't particularly like. And of course, I've called people that on occasions. And obviously, part of my challenge is to realise that you can't dismiss people, because what you're doing when you do that, you're dismissing that person. And that the ego loves to do that. The ego loves to put people in boxes and say, and what you're doing is you're making yourself bigger. Your ego is saying, I'm better than that person, or I know better than that person. And then your ego is then triumphing. And even when you're complaining about, let's say that even on a small scale to a big scale, let's say that you're complaining in your mind or to someone else about an earthquake that happened and killed 100,000 people, and you're saying that's wrong, it shouldn't happen. And of course, on one perspective, it's a terrible tragedy, the loss of life, but we can't. From another perspective, what you're saying is that shouldn't have happened. You're saying you're right and the whole universe is wrong. Everything happens for a reason, and for anybody that's lost anybody in a personal tragedy, of course, it's fucking horrendous. I would never say for a minute that you should stand up and go, right, okay, the universe knows what it's doing. It doesn't quite work like that. You have suffering and pain to go through, and from the perspective that we're at, is a tragedy. But from a higher perspective, from the very highest perspective that there is, the perspective of the universe, nothing is a tragedy. Nothing is neither good nor bad. And of course, when that statement of you should be like little children, it's saying not to make judgments about people, about situations, about yourself. And the thing is, it's a constant challenge to overcome the ego, because it's embedded in our mind, in our psyche, and in our civilization. It's thousands of years of conditioning that we have to overcome. And the first step is recognizing how disruptive it is. The easiest way to exist would just be to carry on with the ego and just make snap judgments about people and situations in your life and everything else. That's the easiest thing to do. But that it's harder to live within the truth now and to see beyond that. The first step is realizing that what good does it do to live within an illusion? Because it is an illusion. You can't, every day your mind is taking over your life. Even when you walk down the street and you wake up in the morning. And have you noticed how when you're in when you go on holiday, or even if you're in a place that you've never been to before, a town that you've never been to, or even a shop, or whatever, a place that you've never been to before, there's less thoughts going around your mind, because you're taking everything in. That's why people like going to new places, because it clears the mind. I personally love it. I went to Barcelona a few weeks ago and saw places I've never been to Barcelona before. I've been to Spain. But it was beautiful just to take in your surroundings, and it kind of clears your mind and stops your mind. But when you're in a familiar environment, your mind has seen everything before, so it doesn't take everything in. So you're going through memory. You wake up in the morning, when you're looking at you're not taking anything in, because you've seen it all before. But really, what you can still have that feeling that you do when you're in an unfamiliar place, when you're in a familiar place, because it's just about presence. It's about focusing on your sense perceptions, focusing on the way that you're looking at things and the way that you're hearing. But of course, when you're when you're in a familiar environment, you don't do that, because you're not interested in your mind. Your ego isn't interested in doing that. It wants something new to grab hold of. It wants a new song or a new person, or it wants something else. So that's just a small example, of course. So the first step for me is recognizing how important it is to live the truth and not in an illusion. Now, that comes down to me about how important it is for personal growth. Now, most people, if not all listening to this, will have that desire inside them for genuine personal growth. If you read spiritual books or whatever. So that will already be there. I, more often than not, do things that I know wasn't the right thing to do. Even today, what was it now? So there's like a neighbour of mine who's really noisy, who I've had numerous arguments with, and I bumped into his girlfriend in a shop, and I've known his girlfriend for like 10 years. She's more of an acquaintance. She's never done anything wrong to me before, but because I've had such problems with him, I kind of see them as a joint partnership. And when I bump into her in the shop, I wasn't rude, but I kind of said, "Oh, hello," and they just completely walked away, because I just thought of no. But I realised that wasn't that was my ego taking over, because as soon as I saw her, the emotion of frustration and anger took over. And my ego said, "No, don't." My ego said at that point, "She's the enemy. Don't talk to her," because in effect, her and her partner have caused some disruption in my life. Nothing major, but a few sleepless nights. There's no doubt about that. Well, I mean, to be fair, it's more him than her. She's got nothing to do with it, really. But I see them. It was my ego took over, and it was quite a small-minded, petty thing to do. But what I had to do when I realised I'd done that was forgive myself immediately and learn from it. Because if I hadn't, that would have created a vicious circle in where I would have gone, "Oh, you idiot, I can't believe you've done that. You think you're spiritual and you're being rude to people?" Of course I wasn't rude, but I could have been a bit more pleasant. And it's very important to, in my opinion, to always try and be the best person you can. You want to project yourself in the nicest possible ways you can. You always want to be got to tell the universe who you are. That's why we're here. Your thoughts and the way you deal with people, it's projected out into the universe, and it's manifesting who we are. So, of course, when I first started on what you might call a spiritual path, I used to beat myself up a lot, because I'd find myself doing things that I knew wasn't right. And then I realised I was just creating more conflict. So when the ego can come in through the back door at any time, and you can start punishing yourself for not being as spiritual as what you should be. So that's a really important thing to understand. Always forgive yourself, always, and you should always forgive yourself. You should never beat yourself up about anything, because why should you? Because you never knew any better. Because if you did, you wouldn't do it. I'm just quoting Jesus today. One of the things that the translation of one of the things that he said, believe was supposed to be on the cross before he was crucified, was, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." And there is so much truth, profound truth in that statement. it basically means that you can only act what your level of consciousness is. Anything else, you don't know else what you're doing. And you may look at let's look at some extreme examples of someone who is a mass murderer, right? That's a mass murderer and a rapist. That person, the way I like to view people like that, and of course if I was personally affected by that, someone I really cared about, it's a bit of a disclaimer here because I don't want people saying, well, you don't know because you... What I'm saying is, I've never been personally affected to such massive degree, although it could happen. And my emotion would probably take over them and I'd vilify them potentially. And do you get what I mean? But looking at it from my perspective at the minute and what the spiritual teachings say is that person, of course, doesn't know any better. They're acting through what their level of consciousness is, and their mind, through its conditioning and through all the anger and pain that it's living through, has committed those terrible atrocities. And of course, the way I look at it is, if that person, when that statement, they know not what they do, if that person truly knew what they were doing and were able to see it, they wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do those things. You look at it from like these people in corporations who just ruthless business people who all they care about is profit, and they flatten forests and things like that. The world has become a deadened surface phenomenon to them. They don't see. It's like employees are numbers on a sheet. You're looking at that person as a number. They're just a number to you. You've basically killed them in your mind. And the same happens when you judge someone. And it's a constant battle. Of course, I live in a town which has quite a rough part to it. So when I am socialising, there are lots of people that I don't think it's unfair to say quite judgmental and quite angry and unpleasant at times. Looking for trouble. Some people. And the only way to do it is forgive them and realise that's where they're up to in their life at the minute. And I do believe that everything that happens to you is for a reason. There is no accidents in the universe. How could there be? How could there be? If you look at how complex and magnificent the universe is, how can there be just a random accident that makes no sense whatsoever? It's impossible. The problem that we could have is that we could try and figure it out. If something ridiculous happens to you, something really tragic, you could try and figure out what it is, but you'll never get the ultimate answer, and nor do you have to. Because people, let's say, from one level, people go through terrible things. There are reports of people going through terrible things and saying it's the best thing that's ever happened to them. Concealed within every situation, in every terrible situation, there is some hidden grace. I think it was Ram Dass that wrote a book called Fierce Grace, I think it was. And it's just that I think he got a really bad illness, and of course at the time he thought it was terrible, but we ended up becoming spiritually enlightened, and that was the purpose. In that, and it was said, I think it was said in the Bible that if need be, you'll be dragged into heaven kicking and screaming, and what that basically means is, certain things will happen to you that will make you enter the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven is within it, is within you. So yeah, for the first step is recognizing what the ego is, realizing that it is never in any situation fruitful to exist in an illusion. Now, of course, there's people would say, well, living in, realizing it's an illusion, it's not going to make me more money, it's not going to get me more women or men or whatever, and it won't in some circumstances, but it will get you the right amount of money, and it will get you the right man or woman. this is another thing. It's about being grateful for what you have. Just from a personal point of view, just as a little story, I don't, want to babble on about myself, but, I have enough money personally for a comfortable living, and I have an adequately paid job that is, that can be quite fulfilling sometimes. And I live in a comfortable place, and I have everything I need. I have a car, I have nice furniture, I have the means to do what I'm doing now, that you can listen and that I can talk. So what else could I possibly need? I don't have a huge family. I have some family. I don't have huge friends. I have enough friends. It's about being grateful for what you have. More is an ego thing. And if you're chasing consistently, I want more money, I want more this, I want more that, it's because you're always trying to get that satisfaction that you will never be able to obtain. Because if you had it, you'd realise it was deep within. That satisfaction is from deep within. It's the only place it can be found. Of course, ambition is different. Ambition is a fantastic thing if it comes from the right place. If your ambition to do better is for your own personal growth and the better of the world, then that's great. If your ambition is based on fear because you don't want to be seen as small, or you need to be bigger than the next person, or you need more money, if your ultimate motivation is simply money, you will make yourself and all those around you miserable, and it will ultimately be destructive. However, if you're going at it from a perspective as it's just a game, because life is, it's just it's a play. We're involved in a play. If you're involved in the play and you know it's a play, and you're basically having fun, and you're going, I'm going to make money because it's that is fine. You're involved in the play of form, and as long as you're aware and you're not taking it too seriously, then that's fine as well. But if you're taking it seriously and you've got this massive inclination to succeed, and you go, yeah, I've done it, and you got your personalized private plate, and you've got all these things, and ultimately that's not the highest order. It's not the highest thing. That doesn't mean. This is the thing about spirituality, and some of my friends and people I know at work, I wouldn't even talk to them about this kind of stuff because they just wouldn't. They'd think I was trying to get them to meditate for 24 hours a day. And it's not about that. It's just about living from a perspective of the truth and appreciating the real things that life has to offer, which is true relationships, nature, going within, and existing in the present moment. Not, getting pissed, getting drunk all the time. I drink, but in a lot of moderation. I see some people, and maybe it's my judgment taking over, and they spend all day, every day, in the pub getting drunk. And I don't think that's the right way to do things. I just don't. You're not growing as a person. When you drink, you're falling below thought, and we're here to rise above thought. Of course, I have a drink every now and again. I think within the last 5 days, I had a couple of beers last night, and that was it. And I might have a couple more tonight. But I always try and not go too far with it. But of course, every now and again, is it a bad thing to let yourself go and have fun? Is it? No, of course it isn't. I'm going to Thailand in 2 weeks for. I can't wait to see all these new places and to see the island hopping and things like that, to have a great time. And I'm going to see it as a challenge as well. At the same time, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to try and appreciate how different people live and try my best to get on with people. It's a challenge, but it's going to be an enjoyable one. And, you've got to have a bit of fun every now and again. Of course. So, I'm going to leave that there. Could you please leave me any feedback, and if you can, just share this video. I'm grateful for all the views and subscribers I have already, but the more the better. if people enjoy it, of course. You know, can't expect people to listen if it's no good. So I do appreciate you listening, and I will speak to you again soon. Thank you very much.